Good afternoon and welcome to Politics in the Pulpit here on your hometown station. This is your holy host back for another opportunity to talk about the two things we're not supposed to talk about, religion and politics, and yes, they do mix. Wasn't with you last Wednesday. Some of you said that was an old show. That's because it was an old show. Sorry about that, but had to basically skip out because it was my wife's birthday, but you know how that stuff works, folks. But today we're back live, and we're excited to have on the show now District Attorney for Los Angeles County, Nathan Hochman. Nathan Hochman, how are you, sir?
I'm very well. Thank you very much for having me on your show.
Thank you very much for calling in today and for always being available for us here at KHTS. Wanted to, first of all, thank you for, at least in the short term right now, just the atmosphere shift, if you will, within the DA's office since you have taken over. I have spoken to several individuals who are within the offices that have said morale is much better. What are your thoughts, DA Hochman?
You know, I've worked very hard to reestablish the morale in the office because for 4 years, these prosecutors were doing the Lord's work and the administration was doing as much as it could to stand in their way rather than support them. So from even before our taking office, I made it crystal clear to the 750 deputy district attorneys, the over 200 investigators, and all the support staff, the hundreds of members of the support staff, that they were the greatest resource of a DA's office, not just the cases or the computers or the courtrooms, but the people themselves. And that my job as the DA was to maximize the greatest resource, which was them. So I've done my best. If they needed additional training, done. They needed resources, done. They needed credit for the good work that they have done, absolutely done. And if they needed trust, what I did is I eliminated 9 special directives that Gascon had put out on his first day by rescinding all 9 of them on my first day, because these were the directives that told these prosecutors that certain crimes and certain criminals they could no longer prosecute, even if the facts and the law were there to go forward with the prosecution. Effectively, it was distrusting all these prosecutors from doing their job. I said the opposite. I said, look, use your collective thousands of years of prosecutorial experience to reach the right result based on the facts and the law in every case. And I will back that up. And that's exactly what I've been doing.
And that is evident by the morale boost. And so, again, we thank you for that. I don't have the availability of having Mayor Bass on the line today, nor Sheriff Robert Luna. But we do have you, DA Hochman, and I want to ask a few questions in reference to the ICE raid protests that occurred in Los Angeles a couple weeks ago. And I want to just ask you, was Los Angeles ready for the ICE raid protests that took over several city blocks?
So it's interesting. On day one, you never, because in part, the federal civil immigration authorities were not in coordination with local law enforcement. When they went ahead and did their first operation, several hundred people showed up. And the federal authorities are good at many things, but crowd control is not something that they had the resources to do. You need a lot of officers and a lot of planning ahead of time to deal with a crowd that might start out with 10, 20, 100, 200, 300, that then grows into the thousands, or eventually when we get going with the protests, the tens of thousands or the hundreds of thousands. So initially, the planning is being done very on the spot. But over the days, as they've sort of figured out how many officers they needed, you had LAPD has over 8,500 sworn officers. The sheriff has over 9,000 sworn officers. The CHP, the 45 local police agencies, probably have an additional 5,000 to 10,000 sworn officers that can be brought into the mix at different combinations to deal with the protests that were occurring. So at the end of the day, as we saw the days progressing, the organization and the mobilization of local law enforcement officers got better and better and better as they figured out how to allow thousands of people to legitimately protest while dealing with the hundreds of people who viewed the protests as just an opportunity to commit a variety of crimes against law enforcement and local businesses. So again, it's a longer answer to say that probably at first they were not ready for what happened, but over the next couple of days they got to the point where they were able to contain it.
And as an individual who's just watching the news and listening to a lot of the media, at least in my opinion, Nathan, spinning a little bit of what was going on the ground, I want to ask, are all future protests going to include things like burning cop cars, which of course we saw, private businesses being forced to shutter for a time, and then of course graffiti being distributed all across state property and federal property and even people's businesses, and then of course police officers being shot at with illegal fireworks, bricks, and the like. When I think of a protest, and I know you do too, sir, I'm just thinking, standing out in front of a federal building or a state building or some place of business and holding up a sign saying, shut this down or whatever. But it seems like these protests have kind of evolved over the last several years into some of this more aggressive type of protesting. Where is the balance for you, D.A. Hochman, when it comes to legal protests, which of course we advocate for, versus what has occurred in some of these protests?
And I think you hit the line correctly. When people want to engage in protected speech, we will go out of our way to protect them engaging in that speech. But when they cross the line into illegal conduct, my orders are from the DA's office to law enforcement, please arrest these people and then bring those cases to us. We'll prosecute them and we'll punish them. We have at this point, probably over 40 cases just in the DA's office. The city attorney's office has literally hundreds of the different types of cases, whether those are the dispersal cases or the failure to abide by curfew. The U.S. attorney's office has filed over 20 cases. And these are people, quite candidly, that if you go ahead and throw a brick at a police officer or a car, you're looking at years in state prison. I've already had 2 press conferences along this line. I'll be having more press releases to make the point to these criminals, and that's what they are. They're just flat-out criminals, that if you want to use a protest as the cover for committing your criminal conduct, we're coming after you, big time. And hopefully this is a different philosophy than we've seen in this county dealing with criminal protesters. I'm not even going to call them criminal protesters because these criminals aren't interested in protesting. They're interested in just committing these crimes. So I'll call them criminals that engage in crimes during protests. In the last 4 years before I got in, you didn't see a lot of prosecutions at all. Now we are prosecuting this criminal conduct. So I'm hoping in the future, when people want to engage in the next protest, they say, great, if I want to march and scream and whatnot, they're going to be okay with that. But if I want to go ahead and take my spray can and vandalize and graffiti a historic building, if I want to go into an Adidas or an Apple store, if I want to drop bricks from the freeway, I'm not going to do that because they're going to arrest me and put me in prison.
Just a couple weeks ago, we had the No Kings protests, not only here in Southern California, but nationally. And for the most part, it seems like much of that was pretty peaceful, and we thank God for that. We know that there's going to be another one planned for July the 4th, which is a week from this Friday. I was wondering what the county was doing to prepare for that.
So law enforcement, again, this is where you keep building upon more and more experience. So getting through the No Kings process required a huge amount of tactical preparation by law enforcement, knowing where to put the officers, where to put the police cars, where to make sure if there's air support, where the air support's going to be, anticipate potential problems, jump on any people who are engaging in criminal conduct and do it very quickly. So I think, again, law enforcement will be ready for the next level of protests that occur in Los Angeles. I think they've sort of got more of an operational, I know, they've become much more operationally sophisticated in how to deal with these large-scale protests. Does it mean that there isn't going to be criminal actions in the protests? I'd be lying to you if I said that, I could guarantee that. But does law enforcement have a much better operational MO to deal with it? I think absolutely in this county.
I want to talk a little bit about Cynthia Gonzalez, the vice mayor of Cudahy, who just recently made some news here by coming under fire for posting a video to her social media where she appears to encourage street gangs, thugs, if you will, to organize against ICE agents. I'm wondering if what she did is something that Nathan Hochman would look into, or is this more of a federal thing?
Again, it's are they? Is it an expression of her thoughts that I totally disagree with 1,000%? Does it rise to a level of criminal conduct? We are certainly aware of it. We'll see what happens as a result of it. I can't comment, obviously, if we begin an investigation on it. But as sort of an expression of thoughts, I couldn't disagree more with those thoughts.
Would you encourage her, if you would, to maybe resign from her position, if in fact this is the case? For a DA to encourage anybody to resign or not resign, that engages me too much in the political process. Gotcha.
My job ultimately is to determine if a crime's been committed, and if so, make sure we have the evidence to prove it in a court of law, and then do our job. So I'm doing my best to stay out of political discussions like that, where my focus will be public safety. And to the extent that any of her statements are endangering public safety, like I said, I couldn't disagree with those statements more.
Yeah. Do you believe that that the Coast Guard was essential in coming in to quell some of the violence a couple of weeks ago, or do you think that was a ruse by the Trump administration?
The federal government can do whatever it wants with its resources. And if it wants to send in 4,000 National Guards and 700 Marines to effectively protect 3 federal buildings, 2 downtown and 1 in Westwood, that's their decision. I mean, it's obviously a decision that involves the expenditure of a lot of time, resources, and money, but that's ultimately their decision. But if they want to actually help the public safety issues in Los Angeles County, I need help in human trafficking. I need help going after fentanyl poisoners. I need help going after people engaged in organized retail theft, residential burglaries, hate crimes, and stuff like this. And I would love additional federal resources that would, get us more investigators and more officers to bring all these criminals to justice. But again, I'm not getting in the way of how the federal government wants to spend its resources and on what it wants to spend them on.
Do you believe that California is turning a little bit of a corner, D.A. Hochman, in terms of some of its thinking, not necessarily Republican or Democrat, but that the Democrats have had so much power over the last several years that maybe the average voter is saying maybe we ought to give the other side a try? Do you feel that there might be a shift happening in our state, just from your perspective?
Again, what I found from the main issue that I was focused on, which is public safety, is that it was really a crossover issue. That people on the far left and the far right just want a safe community to raise their families, to take care of their parents, to enjoy and celebrate and work in, start businesses in, and really build. So the public safety issue turns out to really not be that contentious of an issue when public safety has been challenged. There's a lot of other political issues out there that the parties are going to disagree with. So where the state ultimately goes, I'm hard pressed to tell you. The pollsters could do a much better job on that than I can.
Yeah. D.A. Hochman, thank you so much for calling in today on KHTS here on Politics in the Pulpit. And again, thank you so much for what you do.
My pleasure. Thank you very much, and look forward to the next time I have a chance to have a nice chat with you on the show.
Yes, sir. You have a great day.
All right, take care.
Well, all I can say in terms of what the district attorney said about this councilwoman here, I do hope that for the sake of the people of Cudahy and for broader Los Angeles County, that perhaps maybe the district attorney look into this a little closer. If you haven't heard of this story, again, she posted on her social media in which she appeared to call on street gangs. I'm talking Bloods, Crip, whatever else you want to call them today, to organize in the face of immigration sweeps. Again, you can disagree with ICE all you want. All ICE officials are doing are enforcing the law. When people are throwing bricks at ICE agents, when people are yelling at ICE agents, when people are, whatever they're doing, trying to shoot illegal fireworks at these ICE agents, do you understand, folks, that all they're doing is following the law that the government put in place? And if we want to fix immigration, stop blaming the ICE agents. They're just simply enforcing the laws. The real problem is Congress. And if Congress wants to fix it, I'll be honest with you, I don't think the Congress wants to fix this issue. I believe the immigration issue, much like the abortion issue, is a political cudgel for both sides. And I don't think either side really wants to address the issue, because the Democrats want to run on immigration in terms of an open door policy, and the Democrats want to talk about a closed door policy, but then, or Republicans, I should say, a closed door policy, but then some of them don't even want to implement it completely as well. Now, of course, we've got a president right now that's being real serious about it, and I think the Democrats realize that. And we got a guy named Tom Hochman, whom I always like to joke around and say if Popeye the Sailor Man had a father, it would be Tom Hochman. Tom Hochman is a serious individual, and there is no doubt that these ICE raids are going to continue because nothing is going to dissuade the administration from changing their mind on this issue. When we return here on Politics in the Pulpit, we're going to turn our attention nationally to what happened in New York City last night. You say, what happened? Well, to let you know when we come back here on Politics in the Pulpit on your hometown station. All right, we're back here at the bottom of the hour on Politics in the Pulpit. Again, this is your holy host, the Bishop of Santa Clarita, Pastor Jerry Cook. Quick shameless plug here. This coming weekend, Saturday at 5 o'clock at Freedom's Way Baptist Church, we're hosting a Independence Day concert. We're calling it Stars and Stripes Concert with the Santa Clarita Valley Concert Band. About an hour and 15 minutes worth of good patriotic music. Encourage you to come out. It's a free event, free parking. We will take a standalone honorarium, if you will, for the concert band to go to cover the cost of music and other things that they do. But generally speaking, that's something that's a free will on your part. You don't necessarily have to give a dime. So I encourage you to come out. That's this coming Saturday, June 28th at 5 p.m. And just kind of kick off your Independence Day week. Next Friday, believe it or not, is America's 249th birthday. Just a year shy from 250 years. I wonder how much longer our country has to go before it finally implodes. If you just simply look at our nation alongside other nations down through history, they don't last very much longer than about 300 years. So maybe we got another 51 years left. So let's pray and hope that's the case, maybe longer. Also, for those of you here locally in Santa Clarita, we've got the Santa Clarita Independence Day Parade on July the 4th. Our church, of course, and our school would be involved in that for a third year now. And this year, we're really hoping and praying that we can get that number one trophy. So that's our desire this year, is to do our best not only to represent the Lord Jesus Christ, our church, as well as the theme of this year's parade, which is all about William S. Hart, who ironically, yesterday was an anniversary of his death. I believe he died in 1946 as of yesterday, and so it's been a long time. A lot of people don't even remember, silent movies. All they think about is Charlie Chaplin and things like that, but some of those silent movies get a bad rap because, of course, everyone wants to, they want to watch talkies, right? But Charlie Chaplin, those guys were all very talented people, and so it's amazing what they were able to communicate just with their facial expressions. Well, New York did it again. New York City, that is. If you remember the commercial in the 1980s and 1990s of that Pace Picante sauce, right? New York City, get a rope. Well, New York City will probably have to get a rope because they nominated a socialist Muslim to go against the current sitting mayor this November. All I can say is this guy's name is Zohan Mahadin, I think. I think I got it right. And he has an interesting platform. I'm going to read a little bit from his platform. It says this: he wants to freeze the rent. So essentially, if you are a person that owns rental property, this is going to not necessarily be good for you. Building affordable housing, I don't exactly know what that means other than, I guess, better Section 8 housing. I don't know. Cracking down on bad landlords. Do landlords need cracking down on? I don't know. I guess some do. I guess there are some slumlords out there that are, charging people $4,000 a month for, a 5x8 bedroom. I don't know. I don't know what's going on in New York City. The other thing that he wants to do in New York City is he wants to do something called city-owned grocery stores. And they said, what does that mean? I guess this is basically the implementation of a socialist/communist utopian ideology. This is all I can think of. City-owned grocery stores as opposed to like Vaughn's, which is owned by a conglomerate, or Albertsons, or you name the store. But these are city-owned grocery stores. I'm assuming this is going to be a bit more efficient. Does this mean better produce? I don't know. But have we ever tried something like this in America? We haven't. Now, communist nations have done this. And if you go to the communist nations in the past, that's why they've always had bread lines. So we'll see what happens if New York actually ends up voting for this guy in November, who, by the way, I'm going to say it, ran a relatively decent campaign as a, quote, socialist. Now, that doesn't mean I advocate for this guy. Now, I want you to think about this. Eric Adams is the current mayor of New York City. He was a Democrat, is now running as an independent. He's got some links to Trump, not a whole bunch, but some links to Trump. He had some things that the Biden administration threw at him, and Trump and the administration threw some of those things out. And so many on the Democratic side think that Eric Adams and Trump are somehow linked at the hip, which is not true. Then you've got former three-term New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, who basically ran a stealth campaign here, basically on the basis of his name recognition, didn't really do much campaigning, didn't really get out there very much. And you have to remember, this is the same Andrew Cuomo that left the governor's mansion in disgrace because of a sexual scandal. This is what gave New York State Kathy Hochul. And he also is the same governor that moved all those patients into those rest homes there in New York, all those COVID patients. Then a bunch of them ended up dying in those rest homes, and he covered that for a while until ultimately it was uncovered. So Andrew Cuomo is a disgraced three-term New York governor, and he lost to a 33-year-old TikTok former rapper named, I forget the guy's name. It's hard to pronounce. Zohan. It reminds me of that. Adam Sandler movie. Don't mess with the Zohan. But anyway, regardless of that, he's a 33-year-old TikToker that basically went on the streets, talked to the vendors, rode in taxi cabs, ate vendor food on the streets, and talked to as many people as he possibly could. And according to what I heard, they knocked on practically everybody's door in New York City. Now, again, I don't advocate for this guy. I think that his policies are empty, and they're going to lead to New York City basically reverting back to 1975 under Mayor Koch. So I don't like anything about the guy. But the Democrats are probably going to learn a little bit of how they're going to try to turn their party around by observing exactly what this guy did. And the fact that AOC endorsed him and he ended up winning pretty resoundingly by over 70,000 votes against a 3-term Democratic New York State governor is going to somehow, like it or not, folks out there in conservative land, it is going to lift AOC up in the stratosphere and give her a better chance of being a kingmaker in 2028 or even running herself. I know. Every time we see her, every time we hear her speak, we don't take her seriously. But the fact of the matter is, she represents a part of the Democratic Party that is the most animated at the moment. Now remember, the party of Andrew Cuomo is dying. The Democratic Party of Andrew Cuomo, of Chuck Schumer, of Harry Reid, of Nancy Pelosi is considered establishment, and it is dying. And the part of the Democratic Party that is thriving are the AOCs, dare I say it, the Jasmine Crockett, even though she's not very educated herself, the Bernie Sanders wing. This is the part of the Democratic Party that if the Democrats want to do anything, they're going to have to embrace that. And as far as I'm concerned as a conservative, please embrace that ultra leftist wing of your party so you can continue to be moot. Now, this breathes life into them, at least in the short term. We'll see what happens in the future. And, of course, the fate of New York City will be determined this coming November. Believe it or not, I think New York City residents should probably vote for Eric Adams. He's nuts, but he's a better choice than this socialist, Muslim, Sharia law-loving Democrat socialist. And that's what I think about that guy. All right, so a few days ago, evidently we bombed Iran. And there's now debate about whether or not the bunker-busting bombs did the damage that was reported. And then there was some talk about maybe it wasn't as damaged as the administration said it was. And then I'm also hearing that no, they were damaged completely. In fact, Tulsi Gabbard just came out today and said it is very clear that they're completely annihilated for the most part. Now, this leads me to an interesting editorial here from Town Hall, written by Guy Benson. Now, why haven't any of the living former presidents publicly supported Trump for enforcing their unanimous red line? And you say, what does that mean? Well, before President Trump became President Trump, it was pretty much a bipartisan position that Iran could not get a nuclear weapon. I mean, it was all about Obama and the whole Iran nuclear deal, right? That was a ruse deal, but you get the point. The point was we want to either slow down or make sure that Iran does not get a nuclear weapon. Let's just take President Bill Clinton for a minute. President Bill Clinton described a nuclearized Iran as intolerable and signed the Iran Non-Proliferation Act of 2000, which authorized then President Clinton to take punitive action against individuals or organizations known to be providing material aid to weapons of mass destruction, WMDs, to Iran. President George W. Bush in 2008, quote, permitting the world's leading sponsor of terror to possess the world's deadliest weapon would be an unforgivable betrayal of future generations. Bush added, quote, for the sake of peace, the world must not allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. The Atlantic's Jeffrey Goldberg cooed about President Barack Obama's crystal clear promise to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. Obama himself said in 2012 that when the United States says it is unacceptable for Iran to have a nuclear weapon, we mean what we say. For added emphasis, he said, quote, I don't bluff. President Joe Biden declared that the Iranian regime would never get a nuclear weapon on my watch. He said that in 2021. Vice President Kamala Harris, who thankfully we dodged a bullet there, campaigning for the presidency last year, said this, quote, make no mistake, as president, I will never hesitate to take whatever action is necessary to defend American forces and interests from Iran and Iran-backed terrorists. And I will never allow Iran to acquire a nuclear weapon. Now, do any of these people support President Trump's actions to cripple Iran's rogue nuclear weapons program? They all are on record saying that Iran should not get a nuclear weapon, Iran cannot get a nuclear weapon, and we will penalize and stop any rogue nation or groups out there or proxies that would fund Iran's nuclear program. So here we have President Trump making a pretty decisive decision a few days ago and dropping these bunker-busting bombs that go really deep into the surface of the earth in order to destroy these enrichment sites, 3 of them in particular. Now, they all promised, these former presidents, they would do the same. They all offered assurances with tough-sounding rhetoric, even though Obama and Biden went out of their way to enrich the regime. Remember all the pallets of money that supposedly was frozen assets that both of those administrations sent over to Iran to continue the enrichment programs? Ultimately, however you slice it, folks, the United States of America doing whatever it takes to prevent Iran from getting nukes has been a decades-long bipartisan commitment until President Donald J. Trump. Let me tell you what I think is going on here. Trump is doing what all of these former presidents of both parties said they would. And I think, in a way, it shows the hypocrisy. I'm not much for Charlemagne the God from the Breakfast Club there in New York. But when Trump bombed those facilities in Iran, all of a sudden the Democrats said, we got to impeach him. Every president has done this. Listen to this 25-second clip from Charlemagne the God.
This is one of those times where politicians sound like hypocrites, because Mark Kelly is right. Presidents should get congressional approval, but there have been a bunch of presidents who have ordered strikes without congressional approval. Barack Obama did it against Libya. Joe Biden ordered strikes in Iraq and Syria without congressional approval. Bill Clinton did it to, Kosovo, I think you pronounce it. So presidents ordering military action without congressional approval has become pretty routine. Okay, folks, like I said, Charlemagne the God is not my go-to guy for politics. He's a Democrat, but he's making sense here. And the fact of the matter is, Democrats are showing their hand of hypocrisy. I don't know which president in the last 30 years, and I'm not saying this is right, has ever sought congressional approval to bomb. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying this is hypocrisy. And folks, I think we're safer because Iran's nuclear sites have been, according to Tulsi Gabbard and according to the Trump administration, as we see it now, has been ostensibly put to a cease. It's not going to happen. And so,
All we hear now is chatter of impeaching President Trump. For what? For doing the exact same things that his predecessors have done? Hypocrisy, folks. When we come back here on Politics in the Pulpit, we'll round out the show, talk about a few things happening in the summer. Hope to see you back here in just a few minutes. All right, we're back here for our final segment of Politics in the Pulpit. I want to just quickly go straight to a Red State article that I just pulled up. It says, quote, "It's a safer world today." On Wednesday, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, on her official X account, made a very unambiguous statement about Iran's nuclear facilities, namely that they have been destroyed, and she's the person who's literally in the position to know. It goes on to say, new intelligence confirms that the President of the United States has stated numerous times Iran's nuclear facilities have been destroyed. If the Iranians chose to rebuild, they would have to rebuild all three facilities, Natanz, Fordow, and Esfahan, entirely, which would likely take years to do. I am hearing, on the one hand, that, and then I'm also hearing, on the other hand, that they're not completely destroyed. And so I don't know what to believe, to be honest with you. I think that we're in a world of misinformation and disinformation on both sides of the political aisle, and I think that's probably intentional. So who knows? I guess maybe I'll fly out there on KHTS dime and see if for myself whether or not they're actually destroyed. Before we go off the air here, I have back in studio with me Jen, who, of course, was our board op for several months until, of course, she graduated to loftier positions here at KHTS. But, Jen, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. Are you excited about summer, the kids out of the school, and or are you still tired?
Well, it's still tired. It's just a different chaos.
Yeah.
You're a dad of 3, and all you do is run around like crazy. It just looks different. It's just a different brand of crazy.
Yeah. What are you doing now at KHTS? I know that you have been sent around the city to talk to people, and I think you were pretty active during the big the Flower and Garden show, and you did some commercials and stuff for. Was a grocery outlet, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So,
and Regal Theaters.
That's right,
Yeah.
Regal. That's right. You were out there with Andrew or somebody out there.
Yeah. It was a good time. Stephen came out there too, and I'm a little bit of everything here at KHTS.
You're jack of all trades, but master of none.
Yes, exactly, which is how I like it.
Yeah.
No, it's great. This is a part-time position for me, like we were talking about.
But a full-time mother.
I've got 2 kids. Yeah, so this is a nice balance, and Jerry and company are kind enough to kind of let me be able to work and then still fluctuate with kids stuff and kid necessities. But it's kind of, taking over my priority is being here, and then I figure out the other priority with the kids. So it's a good balance.
How did you and your husband talk about politics and things like that with your kids? I mean, obviously we've had the ICE raids. We had these protests a few weeks ago. I'm sure, even though you guys probably try to shield some of their eyes from that stuff, it gets out there and they see it. How do you guys explain that, if in fact you do?
Well, especially we have a 16-year-old son, and he and I were just talking.
Oh, he knows better than everybody else.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
yes.
He could run
knows
the country.
Everything.
Yes.
Yeah. He was filling me in. But I think mostly the main thing that concerns us is just I was thinking about that this morning. That why are we having a conversation about trans and gender, affirmation and that kind of thing? Like, it just seems so kind of just strange that this is even a topic.
Yeah. A little counterintuitive as you're raising your kids here in Santa Clarita.
Yeah.
Too.
And so it's difficult because you're answering these questions and you want to, at least I try to give them my opinion, but I also want them to be able to form their own opinion. I don't want them just to adopt what I think. Mm-hmm. So it's a fine line. You're trying to guide them properly and give them factual information. You don't want to lie to them. You don't want to, rose-colored glasses them. So it's tricky. It's definitely not easy. And I feel like it's one of those things that parents in our generation, we didn't have to talk about that, back in my day kind of thing. Like our parents did not have to address this with us.
Well, unlike you, I want my kids to adopt everything I believe because I'm completely right about everything, regardless. I don't care what you think. I'm right. So we had the No Kings protest a couple weeks ago,
right.
And I don't know if you drove down McBean and the corner of Valencia there, but there were a lot of people scattered on all four sides of that corner. I don't know if you had your kids with you or anything like that, but did they inquire about, hey, what are these folks doing?
I did. I had my daughter, actually, who's 12 years old, and she said, why are they out here? It's too hot. And I said, true.
And why do they say no kings? We have no kings here.
Yeah. So that was also a little tricky, and I said, well, they have the right to be out here. They have the right to protest. That's part of what makes our country so great, is that they are given that freedom to express their discontent with
something. You have a right to be a dope if you want to be.
Right. But you cannot impede traffic. You cannot throw rocks at police officers who are, like you mentioned earlier, these ICE agents are doing their job.
That's it.
So you don't have that
Congress
right.
should fix the problem.
Right. And, so I was just trying to delicately explain to her what was going on, that people were here illegally and that they are being asked to leave. And, if you want to be here, by all means, do it legally. We would love to have you here. Just go through the proper channels. So, she's 12 and wants to know why are they hanging out at the mall? Why don't they go in and shop? So
yeah, well, it is what it is. But I drove through there briefly, and I did see a lot of people there. There must have been over 1,000 people.
There were a ton of people.
More than I thought. And there's a side of me that thinks, I wonder how many of those folks were paid for. It's possible that some of them were. Now, here's what's funny. So, somebody gave me a story about showing me something on Craigslist where people were being paid to be protesters. So on Sunday on my way to church, my wife and I noticed that there were 5 tour buses in tandem driving north on the 5. Mm-hmm. And I jokingly said to my wife, I says, well, if they were paid, all the protesters are back on those tour buses and they're heading back out of town.
Yeah.
It's just funny because I'd never seen those tour buses before, and here they were in tandem going north on the 5.
That is interesting.
The day after.
Do they just take them from spot to spot? Like we're going to be protesting over here today, and this is where we go?
Well, all I can say is, will you be at the parade on a week from this Friday?
We'll be out of town.
Oh, that's right. You're going to PA.
Yeah, we travel. Yeah,
yes.
My in-laws are in Pittsburgh, so we'll be enjoying the 4th of July there.
The No Kings protest will probably affect you there as well.
I'm sure
there's
it will.
supposed to be another one on July the 4th.
I'm sure.
But I need to remind those folks that there are no kings, especially on Independence Day, because we actually annexed ourselves from the King George.
Yes, we did. Hamilton would have taught you that, right? If you're a musical theater lover, you would already know this.
If you like musical theater, you'd have had your education. Well, Jen, thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Even though that our regular board op is enjoying a vacation time right
now. He's away on a cruise, I believe.
Yeah, well, it is what it is. We can enjoy that kind of stuff, I guess. Well, next week at this time, we are going to have a state senator. Let me rephrase that. Someone running to replace state senator, and her name is Christine Irwin. We've had her on the show before. She comes highly advised from some really higher ups in the Republican Party. So encourage you to stick around with us next week. Same bad time, same bad channel. Thanks for tuning in today on Politics of the Pulpit on your hometown station.